Hello and welcome to the video. This is finally my build out and flight review of this thing here. This is the Baby AR Wing Pro from ZOHD. Now this is one of their first new models for quite a while, and I was quite excited to see it because it has more than a passing resemblance to its bigger brother, the AR Wing Pro. The Baby AR Wing seems to have been designed though for some different flying styles. The original AR Wing Pro, I had a bit of a hand in helping design that, is kind of a big endurance cruiser, while this, being a much smaller model, is really designed for more rounded out flying, and it's capable of quite a bit of stuff. Now I've had enough time here to get it flying and play with it, and also I've put a full iNav setup in mine. In fact, I've done a complete iNav for Beginners series that I'll put a link down below if you want a sneak peek, that shows all of the different steps and everything I've done to set this up. As you can see inside, there is absolutely bags of room. As I'll show you in a moment, the only challenge that I've had is how to fit a Walksnail HD system into the nose, but I have done it. The other thing as well is there are a couple of comments online about the motor and prop being too small. Let's talk about that, and a couple of other misconceptions too. So without much further ado, let me go onto the bench and give you a closer view of how I've got it all set up. So the big thing you're probably spotting here is in the nose. I have done an adaptation to get the Walksnail unit in. This is the big oversight, I think, in the setup of this model. This whole nose area could have been designed a little bit more cleverly so that you could put modern HD systems in here as well with the cooling that you need. To get this in the front, what I did was I cut vertically and horizontally above where the camera goes. Then I had to cut a little bit off this top wedge, and that gave me enough room. There is airflow through it to try and keep it cool, and then everything is kind of held in place. That was the only real bit of effort that I had to put into building this model. If I take the top off, let's go through the components inside. The only adaptation I've made here on the canopy is I've cut an extra air hole here at the front. Hopefully you can see that. The reason for that is I'd like to have a little bit of airflow on the power regulator that I've got here to run the 1S board. I could have wired that into the flight controller, but I didn't bother. Other big news is that I am flying mine with a lithium ion pack. This is a 3S lithium ion pack with 2 cells at the bottom and 1 at the top. In the documentation from the manufacturer says that these won't fit. They absolutely will. This, however, is a heavy battery. It's 171 grams, and although it gives me long flight times, it has necessitated 15 grams of weight here at the back below the ESC. Not ideal. Do I have to do anything in terms of the canopy at the bottom for it to fit? Well, I made a couple of depressions each side, but actually it fits fine without having to make that. But just squeezing those in a little bit, the canopy fits absolutely perfectly. So if you really want to run a 3S lithium ion pack and you've only got this style rather than the flat style, you know what? It's absolutely going to work. In terms of the rest of the build, we have a Maytech F405WMN here in the middle with the 2 servo connectors going out into the wing. That is connected to an Express LRS receiver here at the back, the antennas of which are set at a 45-degree angle, giving them a 90-degree angle here at the back. All I did was I just poked a hole into the foam, just a little dab of Yoo-hoo pour, and just pop them into place. They sit beautifully there. GPS is here, connected into the U-arch just by the side, and then we have the USB connector and buzzer over here, just kind of connected in via double-sided foam tape, just like the flight controller. But there's absolutely shed loads of room in here. You could use a much bigger flight controller and some quite chunky stuff if you really wanted to. Again, the only thing that I've been disappointed about here is the fact that I have had to put this 15 grams weight under the ESC just to offset that battery. So that means my all-up flying weight is 393 grams, a little bit more than I wanted, but actually it flies fine. And this little teeny weeny motor and prop here at the back actually does a really nice job. I know lots of people were worried about whether or not that was up to the task, but it actually is. So now you've seen how it's all put together, let me talk a little bit about what it's like to fly. Well, let's go through the headlines first. First of all is that it is very easy to hand launch. I have done this adaptation here. I've got my wet and dry paper here on the top and also here at the bottom of the wing. That provides a really solid grip in both wet and dry conditions to throw it. However, the motor and prop easily has enough static thrust to get it into the air, even with my slightly portly weight that I've got here with my 393 grams. The other thing to talk about then is that I do think the motor and prop is not a bad balance of both static thrust for easy hand launching, efficiency, which we could talk about in a moment, and also top speed. It's not a particularly fast wing, we'll cover that in a moment, but it's actually not bad in cruise and it makes it easy to launch. I'm sure lots of pilots, when they get them, will change over the motor and prop to something that's bigger, but actually for pottering around and having a nice time with it, the supplied motor and prop on 3S is easily capable of giving an awful lot of fun and enjoyment. Maximum amp draw that I've measured with this is about 20 to 20.5 amps at full 100% throttle. That's only going to give you about 61 miles an hour in level flight. This isn't a speed demon, but 61 miles an hour will still cover quite a bit of ground. And in cruise, which I would reckon about 25-30 miles an hour, it's pulling about 6 amps. So it's reasonably efficient. It's not a floater, you know, this is a wing, but that's not bad. Uses about 1000 milliamp hours from your battery about every 7 minutes. So that'll give you an idea for the battery that you've got in there, whether or not, you know, how long you're going to get to it. If you only have 1000 milliamp hours available to fly with, in mixed flying, you're probably going to get 6 to 7 minutes. If you have a 2000 milliamp hours to play with, you're going to get double that. It is affected by wind quite a bit. This gets bounced around a lot, even with iNav on here. You know, if it's particularly windy, even with the weight that I've got on this, and I'd recommend that I would build yours out a little bit lighter. I am definitely pushing it with the 3S lithium ion battery that I have in here, and with that extra tail weight, you know, I'm adding in a couple of 100 grams of battery. That anything over kind of a 12-15 mile an hour wind, you don't fly it unless you have a stabilizer in it that's going to help you get it around the field. In terms of the main setups, central gravity is spot on. Go with those marks, get them right in the middle. It's nicely positioned, and the throws in the manual are kind of 9mm. I would say that they are a good setup too, and it says give yourself a little bit of reflex of a couple of millimeters. I think that's a great place to start. So let's go through the star ratings and I'll tell you what those look like. Let's start about talking about how slow it can fly. It's not bad at all with this. It will do around 15 miles an hour, so that's going to give it about 4 stars. It's not a real floaty plane, but it can easily come in at quite a slow rate of knots, so you don't have to have a couple of 100 feet to bring it in. You can kind of glide it in without too much problem. In terms of high speed, well, it's not brilliant at that. It only does 61-62 miles an hour going flat out with the standard configuration on 3S, so it's not a speed machine, but you can still cover an awful lot of ground at 60 miles an hour in the time you have to fly. Efficiency, this gets 3 stars because it's only pulling about 1000 milliamp hours every 7 minutes. I've got a lithium ion pack in here which gives me about 3000 milliamp hours to play with. So with this setup that I've got here, I can fly for 20 minutes. So that's not bad for a small wing like this. In terms of the noise, that small motor and prop do make a little bit of a whine, but it isn't particularly loud. You can hear it when it's close, but as soon as it gets far away, it kind of disappears. And if there's any kind of wind noise about at all, you will not be able to hear it once it's a couple of 100 feet away. Toughness, well, so far so good here. It's surviving most of the crashes with little damage. In fact, there isn't any damage on here at all. The only reason I'm not giving this 5 stars is because of the nose modification that I've had to do in order to fit the walk snail stuff. That will potentially have left the nose a little bit less strong, and if I fly into something, there's a good chance that I'm going to break that nose and unfortunately potentially break the walk snail unit too. Acrobatics, it's not bad at all. If you go for the recommended throws of about 9mm, you're easily able to perform basic loops and rolls, and it is nice and stable, particularly if you put iNav in it. It's not a 3-star, it's slightly better than that. It's not a kind of a 4-star. I would say this is about 3.5. So although it's capable of acrobatics, I don't think it's designed for acrobatics straight out the box. I think probably slightly bigger control surfaces and a chunkier motor would have been better to get a higher score for acrobatics. Room inside gets a 4 stars. The only reason it doesn't get 5 stars is because of the effort that I had to put into putting walk snail into the nose. As I mentioned, this is the big oversight in my humble opinion. I think they could have done a little bit more thinking about how modern HD FPV systems could have fitted inside the nose. I know that there are things coming out that will be on the channel soon that have done a slightly better job in that area. And the last one is trouble breakdown. It gets a full 5 stars for this. It breaks down into smaller parts without the need for tools, and the wings come off. Although the size of it will actually fit in most places without getting into too much trick at all. It is all held together with thumb screws. That also does mean that if something breaks, then you can get a replacement part. Servo performance is fine, the way it flies is fine. I like the fact that it'll break down, so you can absolutely stick this in a backpack if you take the wings off, which means that if you want to go somewhere out the way and fly around for 20 minutes and maybe not break any speed records, but just have a really nice flying time and an easy hand launch, this has been a nice setup. So I really like it. However, if you wanted a speed machine, something like the Hewing F01 is probably a little bit more aggressive with a top high end. That doesn't float for toffee. This floats an awful lot better than that. But I'm sure lots of people, when they get theirs, will be changing out the motor and prop. But I'm not necessarily sure that that is what this is really designed for. There are other wings out there if you want to go and burn the sky. This, I think, is a really nice all-rounder and kind of gives the feel of a larger wing, particularly when it isn't too windy. So hopefully that answers a lot of the questions for you out there. Yep, you can fit a lithium-ion pack that's 3S where one of the cells is above the other two. The motor and prop setup is actually not bad, and it's a piece of cake to set up in something like iNav. The only downside I think that they could have done a little bit better on, for me personally, is that nose design is maybe being a little bit smarter about making a place for modern HD FPV systems to fit in there without having to reach for the knife. So stay tuned, there will be more stuff coming to the channel on these more compact fixed wings soon, and there's something on the way that I think you're going to like. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless 360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy flying.